Why do some hikers struggle so much on the downhill when in reality it should be the easiest part of hiking? Well, I think it comes down to these 4 lessons that a lot of people are missing, and this will change the way that you think about training for the downhill. And if you think I'm going to tell you to just do more single leg eccentric step downs and focus on your knee alignment, then you're wrong. I spent the last 13 years training hikers and watching very closely how people move, both in training and in the mountains. And I've learned so much about the human body from just watching people and seeing how they move and where the fear is when they're going down. The first big lesson here is that you need unconscious access to more movement options, because deceleration happens so fast. It takes 0.6 to 0.8 seconds for the human body to take a step. And if you think you're going to be able to align your foot and your knee in perfect position every time, then yeah, you're going to be stuck moving pretty slowly downhill. Moving in the mountains has to be unconscious, so it has to happen automatically, like muscle memory. If you've ever thought that you need to avoid striking your heel or focusing where your knee is going, you're attempting to make a conscious change to a movement that happens in a split second. Trying to coordinate the vast complexity of bones, muscles, tendons, ligaments in exactly the right place on every step you take is a fool's errand. Not only is it impossible, but you'll spend all your time worrying about what your body is doing instead of actually just enjoying your surroundings. So in order for movement to feel thoughtless and fearless, your training needs to be focused on giving you conscious access to difficult positions, not by stretching, but by moving in and out of them in order to rediscover these positions that build muscle memory that you can use unconsciously later. Moving slow and controlled can be valuable for sure. We absolutely do that. But at some stage, you need to progress to moving with a little bit more speed and aggression if you want to descend naturally without all the fear of movement. I realize some of these concepts are getting pretty deep, and that's why I've created a free school. It's a brand new thing that I've just opened. I'm really interested in educating hikers about their own physiology so they can get to know themselves and have a better time hiking. There's a link in the description. Your foot and your knee are rarely going to be in the exact position that you do single leg eccentric step downs in, and variations in the terrain in hiking require variations in movement. So there's a lot to be said here for variety and just broadening your movement options at the foot and at the hip in particular. So right now we're going to look at some of those alternative strategies so you can get a bit of an idea how to do this. First, what we want is to start training in positions that deceleration feels safe in, and select movements that allow you to build trust and confidence. If you have a history of knee pain, it's only natural to develop a fear of the downhill. So the best starting point to build trust and confidence might just be to bring the ground up to you in your training. So you can start with lunging with a bit of speed and confidence into a high box, build trust there for a few weeks, and then lower the box height. With time, patience, and practice, you can move the ground further away from you by elevating the back foot a little bit at first. And as you build trust and confidence, little by little, you'll be more capable there. But what most people do is they go through all these progressions far too quickly, and then they find a sticking point and they just give up and they think, well, this doesn't work for me, without ever asking why. Instead of experimenting and learning and being curious, they start all over again with some completely new program, and inevitably they get stuck again. And this continues over and over until at some point they start believing that their body is broken. And that's not a fun place to be. I've been there. And it's also not true. You wouldn't let anyone else tell you you're broken, and it shouldn't be any different with your own inner dialogue. Your body is an adaptation machine. You just need the right stimulus and to gradually expose the mind and the body to a little bit more over time. So the most important thing is sticking to the plan, no matter what comes at you. You have a bad day, you can still get a good workout in. So we've talked about moving with speed to build confidence, but we can also do the complete opposite end of the spectrum by holding a position in an isometric. And this can be a great way to develop trust and open up more unconscious access to movement later. And strength training is fundamentally about building that trust relationship between the mind and the body. It's about opening up that conversation and getting the messaging to the brain very, very clear. Sometimes you have to get into these little dark corners of the body, get into these positions where you're just not used to being in, and just spend some time in these isometric holds. This teaches you to relax all the muscles that don't need to contribute to keeping you in that position, whilst your attention is on the breath, staying super chill, keeping it really relaxed and calm. And this in itself has the potential to rewire pain pathways in the brain and the central nervous system. That brings me to the last thing that I wanted to touch on here, and it's probably the most important, and it comes down to how your brain perceives pain. The human mind and body is always doing anything that it can to avoid pain and discomfort, and that's especially true when it comes to movement at the knee. So let's say you struggled with just doing any of these basic dynamic movements here. Even with that element of bringing the ground up to you, there's still some pain in the knee that your body is giving you a signal saying like, hey, this is dangerous, you're about to pop something. But what most people don't understand is that pain isn't always indicative of damage. In fact, there's a lot of pain that is neuroplastic. And what a lot of people struggle to wrap their heads around is that physical pain doesn't have to have a good reason to be there. I'll give you a super common example with this. When you have knee pain, you go to the doctor, you get some scans and some tests, and then they come back with good news. Like, you're all clear, we didn't find anything. There's nothing wrong with you. Okay, well, if that's true, then why do I still have knee pain? In so many cases, there's not a structural issue or damage to tissue that's causing the pain, but rather your brain and your central nervous system perceiving something as a threat and giving you a pain response as a result. Often it's just an overprotective mechanism that might have come from like a past injury where you really hurt yourself, and it's like your brain remembers that. So in many cases it's actually fine, and it's just a miscommunication between the body and the brain. And what you need to do is clear up those misunderstandings and build some trust and get that conversation flowing again. If your brain and central nervous system are being a little bit too overprotective, then it may not be acting in your best interest. Sometimes we need to hack the system a little bit, get into a position, hold it, just to build confidence and rewire those pain pathways. Literally demonstrate to your body like, hey, look, I'm here, I'm fine, nothing's wrong. You don't need to clench up and tighten all this tissue because we're safe. We're also safe here when we rotate and flex and extend through all of these different positions. And at some point, it's just got to be like, look at all of this ability that we have to be able to lunge left and right and rotate and extend. At some point, it's like we have to let go of this. None of this is dangerous. That takes time, it takes patience, it takes learning and experimenting and practice with your body. Progress in the human body rarely happens quickly. You might not see much change from day to day, but after you do that for a month and you look back and realize, okay, I moved the needle a little bit. 90 days later, all right, this is starting to feel okay. Now the fear of the downhill isn't so strong anymore. Once you've demonstrated that ability to your body over and over again in a safe environment, building trust, building that mind-body relationship that's not based on fear. People tend to think that if their knee is painful, then it must be an issue with the knee itself, which in my experience is often true, but sometimes the site of the pain isn't always the site of the problem. I've heard this so many times from people when we actually do work with them first on their feet. This is one example.
I came here for the knee issue, but I hadn't realized how non-functional my feet were being in all this. And so that's why I said that I didn't realize it, but the feet work alone would probably be worth the price of admission, because my feet feel fine at the end of a hike instead of feeling beat up.
So if you've never really considered that your feet might be the issue, you should check out the downhill module in my free school, where I cover the 3 key things that the foot needs. And this is where you'll find big lessons that make all the difference. I've just opened up this group recently. I've been working on this for 2 years, and I'm super excited now to share it with you guys, for everyone else who's viewed my channel for so long. I know that it seems like I haven't been making too many videos lately, but I've actually made hundreds. They've just been going directly into my inner circle. But I'm opening this up to everyone now. You can join and start learning for free with the rest of the community of hikers who want to get better at hiking. But crucially, for the people that want to learn about their body. True change rarely happens in the absence of learning. That's all for this one. I hope you learned something. If you want to go deeper into that learning, we've got our free school. I'll see you in there.